Hi there, welcome, Donita here. So I am doing a full face today using a hybrid of 3D and Demi, which is my favorite, which I think is really the best way to go for mature skin. But some people do just fine with color correcting with a couple of our shades that are used a lot as color correctors, but I personally like Demi, so I'm going to do a hybrid, and I'm using a couple of shades that I haven't used before. I'm using High Tide Bronzer, Nova Illuminator, and Ash Contour. I thought the cool contour would go well with the warm bronzer. So let's get started. Oh, and I'm also using Hazel as my main shade, which I thought it was too dark, but it's actually perfect. So I'm going to use a little bit of Hazel just on my redness. I don't need it all over my face, so just putting it on my troublesome areas. Because our makeup is coverage. The contour, the lip and cheek, the brightening, it's all considered coverage. So you don't need it everywhere, which is nice. So then you're not, layering on a bunch of makeup. Okay, so that is my main shade. I always like to, after I put my main shade on, just go through with a moistened beauty blender and just pick up any excess and kind of push that into my skin. And now let's do a little bit of contour. But before I do that, I'm just using my balm just to make sure my under eyes are good and moist. That is key for us mature skin gals. Okay, now I'm going to use my detail brush. This is the ideal brush for contour because it has like this broomstick, yeah, and it's flat. It's just perfect. So I like to get the edge with contour, and then I have a large forehead. If you don't, you may not even want contour on your forehead, at least. And then I like it from the corner of my mouth to the top of my ear. This is just a subtle contour on me. Probably my favorite contour right now is indigo, and it's rather warm. But I thought that might be a little much with the High Tide bronzer because it's very warm. And then I do my jawline. I like to start out by going in front of that jowl, and then I kind of hug the edge. And I try to stay out of the dip. See how it dips in right there? What I like to do is go in with my brightening and just add some brightness right there, because I wouldn't want to accentuate the dip, and that's what contour would do. So okay, so I'm not going to blend out my cheekbones, but I am going to go ahead and blend my forehead. And I blended my jaw kind of as I go, because I'm notorious for forgetting. Make sure that's good. Okay, it's just a subtle contour, but we don't need much. And then I'm putting a little bit of my brightening just down the center of my face, and then I like it on the sides of my nose I feel like I have a large nose, so by adding brightening there, I feel like it helps narrow it. And then just a little bit on the bridge of my cheekbone. I get a shadow there just where my eyeball is sinking into my skull. But there is that. Blend out that brightening. Okay, and now let's do some bronzer. So this is High Tide and this is Nova. I like to mix them together. So I'm using the fluffy end of the blush bronzer and I just swirl around in both of those. Want to make sure it's all evenly distributed on the bristles. And then I'm just placing it on the high peaks. But I like the Nova with it because it helps kind of tone down the warmth. And then this is where I take that brightening between my brows and I push that into the bronzer, and then it just kind of all marries together. You know, now the kind of bronzy look is really in, so that's kind of the look I'm going for. And then I just use the bronzer to help blend in that contour. Isn't that pretty? I think it turns out real pretty. And if we go too low, we'll clean it up. But I think that looks pretty good. And then I like a little bit of bronzer on the, kind of on the bridge of my nose. Down my neck. Make sure everything's all the cohesive. Okay, and now this is when I like to go to, some Demi. So I like to use the bright brush to start with, but I think I'm going to go ahead and use the spot brush. It's just real, got a little spot tip, because I have areas right here on my forehead where I burnt my forehead. So I like to take some Demi. This is Wild 1, Yellow Orange 1, and I just pixelate these areas. I just dot in and around. And then I use the fluffy end just to kind of blend it all down. And I think that helps. Okay, now let's go to the bright brush. And I want to tackle these dark circles first. And I know that they're a deep purple, so I want to use a deeper orange, because orange is the opposite of the deep purple. And so I like to use 03, orange 3, and I just get a little bit on the tip. And I place it directly on that purple. And you don't need much. And then after I put a little on, I like to sit back and see how that looks. And I think that looks pretty good. Okay, then I like to take the fluffy end and I like to just give a wash under the rest of the eye. And then whatever's left on this brush, the small end, I just go in that outer corner. I I should have waited because I haven't done eyeshadow yet, so we might have to go back in, but if we do, it's okay. Normally I have my eyes done, but I wanted to do them on camera because I love High Tide as an eyeshadow. It's really pretty, especially for summer. Okay, now I want to tackle those dents. So these are red and blue, and so I need to use a green yellow. So GY1, the green tackles the red and the yellow tackles the blue. And it just filters that color. It's really pretty amazing how well. I got a little too much on this side, but we'll get it all blended out. There we go. And then I'm going to use this cleaning towel here, clean that color off, and then I'm going to go into this lighter orange. It's a peach shade called 01, and then I like to filter out my 11s. And it also helps to brighten that inner between the brows a little bit more. Okay, there we go. That looks good. And now let's go ahead and do some eyeshadow while we're here before we go any further. And I'm going to use, this is called a blur brush, and it's just a little bit bigger than the eyeshadow brush, the tip. It has a bigger tip. The fluffy end is about the same. But I like to use this for eyeshadow. And this bronzer is pretty pigmented, so you don't need much. And it just gives that like terracotta color. It's really pretty. It reminds me of our powder eyeshadow called Bubba. But isn't that a pretty shade? I like it. I have very hooded eyes, so I bring it up just a little and then kind of bring it out. But I really like it. Lost an eyelash. Do again over here. And I had prepped my eyelid with my MAC paint pot in the shade Painterly. Okay, I think that's pretty good. And what I like to do is also take and put, I have a green top on, and I like to take this shade, it's called number 33, and I like to put it under my eye. It's a real pretty green shimmer, and it adds color without adding a lot of color, if that makes sense. And it really complements the terracotta. But I like that. And then I like to take, let me find the right brush. this brush, and then it's called a multitasker, and then just on this outer corner, like the outer fourth, I just deepen it with a dark brown called Cocoa. I'm putting a little bit of that cocoa at the lash line too. All right, and now I want to go in with, this is called Bright Eyes. It's a shimmer, but I like to put it in the middle of the lid. And because I have hooded eyes, you can't really see it until I open my eyes, but it's very pretty. I also like to use hot chocolate. Hot chocolate's really pretty too. And let's go ahead and do one more thing. Let's go ahead and take some of this cocoa and just deepen that outer corner. I have such hooded eyes, especially on this side. I kind of just barely hold it up so I can get out of those folds, you know. And then I like to take this shimmer shade right here called Drift, and I like to put it in the inner corners. And then this matte cream shade called Cupcake just at the brow. Because I have to go so high because of my hooded eyes, I like to put that kind of last, just to clean it up. But I think that's pretty. I like it. Okay. And now, what do we need to do? I think that's all looking pretty good. Have a hair. Feel it. Sorry, it's gonna drive me crazy. There, I got it. Okay, I want to go ahead and take my Moisten Beauty blender again and just go through. Make sure I don't have too much product. Okay, and let's line our lips with our contour. Going to go back to the multitasker. This isn't a very dark contour. Okay, and I want to use R7. It is, I know it looks so scary, but it is so pretty. So go back to the blush end of the blush bronzer, and it's so pigmented, you just need a little bit, but it gives you that flushed, like you just came in from the heat. Isn't that pretty? But I mean, just a very little bit. Now, if I got too much, which I don't think I do, I could go in with the brush I put my main foundation shade on and just tone it down just with what's left on that brush. But I think it's good. And the great thing about using Demi as blush, it stays all day. It is not going anywhere. And then I like to put a little of that on my nose. So it just gives like that sunburnt look. A little on my chin. And then just a little on my forehead. And then I like to add a little to my brow, just to make it all cohesive. But it just adds the perfect amount of color. I like it a lot. Okay. And now I think I want to clean up just a little bit under here. So I'm going to go in with just my main shade, Hazel. And I got another little dot of my brightening. And I'm just going to clean that up like that. That just helps clean that up and kind of lift it a little bit. And then I'm going to take a little bit of that brightening just where I get this shadow from my eyeball sinking in. I think I got carried away on my nose with the blush. Okay. There, perfect. And now let's put just a little bit of this on the lips. So I have my lips moisturized. And this is just more like a stain. And let's go ahead and add some Sunshine State. It's this pretty gloss. And it has gold flecks in it. I like it on the lips. Okay, everything's looking pretty good. I want to set just a couple of places. So I'm going to take my setting spray, just put a little in my hand. And this is a Stands Out sponge. And I like to get a little bit and then just tap it under my eye. And that will set those under eyes. Okay, and my dents are showing, but I'm not going to stress about it. I'm just going to leave it. They're going to be showing anyway. It always happens because I'll put on my glasses and, you know. So now I want to set my T-zone. So I'm using this small fluffy brush. I want to put a little bit of our setting powder. See how it just fits right in, it's just right here, right into my compact. And it almost has a mattifying, so I like to put it right here where my pores tend to get bigger. And then I want to set those dents. Okay, I think it's looking pretty good. The bronzer I really love too right now, I'm putting a little bit of that on, is Heatwaves. Just stuck my finger in it. But this is Heatwaves, and it is so pretty. It's a red, like a deep clay, like a reddish clay. But that's what I added a little bit of to my forehead. I really like it. Okay, I'm gonna set my forehead with a little bit more powder, just because I don't like my hair sticking. But even our powder, you still have a sheen. You see that? That's why I really like our powder. Okay, so that's what I have, and I really like this look, and I like High Tide more than I thought I would. It's actually, my favorite is using it as an eyeshadow, but it's a beautiful bronzer. So anyway, guys, thank you for watching, and I really hope you have a good day.